In the early hours of May 25, 1968, the sleepy town of Newcastle upon Tyne, England, was shaken by an event that would etch itself into the annals of criminal history. The case of Mary Bell, a 10-year-old girl who would later be convicted of the manslaughter of 2 young children. The case sparked a nationwide outcry and raised difficult questions about juvenile justice, mental health, and the psychology of child offenders. This chilling story is a complex one, involving innocence lost at a very young age, deep psychological trauma, and the shocking nature of crimes committed by a child who, at the time of her offenses, was barely on the cusp of adolescence. What follows is a detailed exploration of the Mary Bell case, its impact, and its enduring significance in discussions about youth crime and rehabilitation. Mary Flora Bell was born on May 26, 1957, to an unstable family. Her mother, Betty Bell, was a woman who had a history of mental health problems and a deeply troubled relationship with her daughter. Betty was not the nurturing maternal figure that Mary desperately needed. In fact, Mary's early years were marked by neglect and abuse, both physical and emotional. Betty Bell reportedly had a history of unstable relationships and had even been known to work as a prostitute, contributing to an environment where Mary was often left to fend for herself. Mary's father, a man named Billy Bell, was absent from her life, leaving her mother to raise her alone in a harsh and unforgiving environment. While Mary's childhood was chaotic, it wasn't unique. Many children in similar social conditions have been exposed to similar traumatic experiences, but what made Mary's case distinct was her early exposure to violence and the disturbing behavioral patterns that began to emerge in her. From a young age, Mary exhibited behavior that was alarming. She showed signs of aggression, cruelty to animals, and a disturbing lack of empathy. However, her behavior was often overlooked or dismissed by those around her, perhaps because of her age or the fact that such behaviors were unfortunately not all that uncommon in the difficult social environment she lived in. It's important to note that some of the root causes of Mary's behavior could be traced back to the neglect and emotional abuse she endured at home. Studies of juvenile crime show that children who grow up in environments characterized by neglect, abuse, and dysfunction are more likely to engage in violent or criminal behavior later in life. Mary's case was no exception. The events that would eventually lead to Mary Bell's notoriety began on May 25, 1968, when she and her accomplice, a 13-year-old girl named Norma Bell, no relation, were involved in the death of a 4-year-old boy named Martin Brown. Martin was found dead in an abandoned house in the west end of Newcastle. The cause of death was not immediately clear, and authorities initially believed the boy may have died from an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. However, suspicion quickly grew, especially as investigators discovered strange graffiti at the scene. The graffiti included cryptic phrases like, "I murder so that I may come back, and the murderer is a girl." These unsettling clues pointed to the possibility of a deliberate act, and the investigation turned to focus on the children in the neighborhood. At first, the authorities focused on the Bell girls as potential witnesses. However, upon closer inspection, the police found that Mary Bell and Norma were not just witnesses, they were actively involved in Martin's death. The investigation revealed that the girls had not only killed Martin, but had also subjected his body to horrific mutilations, although the extent of these acts was not as fully known at the time. What made this case even more perplexing was that Mary Bell and Norma seemed almost indifferent to the gravity of their actions. They were seen giggling and discussing the murder in the days that followed, which further disturbed investigators and the local community. Just a few months later, on July 31, 1968, a second victim, 3-year-old Brian Howe, was found dead. Brian was also discovered in a similar abandoned house, with clear signs of being murdered in a brutal and calculated manner. His body showed signs of strangulation, and it became evident that the girls had again been involved in the killing. The case quickly took a darker turn when investigators uncovered more details about the nature of the deaths. The similarities between Martin and Brian's deaths were striking. Both children had been strangled, and both had been left in secluded, abandoned buildings in the same neighborhood. But the most chilling detail was the deliberate nature of the killings. These were not random acts of violence. The deaths seemed premeditated. Moreover, it was clear that Mary and Norma had a disturbing lack of remorse. They continued to play and act like typical children, with Mary even seeming to derive some pleasure from the chaos she had caused. Her detachment from the gravity of her actions was both unsettling and puzzling. The investigation into the deaths of Martin Brown and Brian Howe was rigorous, but it wasn't until later in the summer of 1968 that Mary and Norma were finally arrested. The police had begun to zero in on the two girls, especially after they discovered further details about their behavior and the evidence they had gathered from the crime scenes. At the time of the arrest, Mary was only 10 years old and Norma was 13. Both girls were taken into custody, and soon after, the extent of their involvement in the deaths became clearer. During questioning, Mary Bell reportedly made a chilling confession. She admitted to strangling the two children but showed little emotion or remorse during the interrogation. This lack of empathy was one of the most shocking aspects of the case. In December of 1968, Mary Bell and Norma Bell stood trial for the murders of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. The trial attracted widespread media attention, largely because of the girls' young ages and the chilling nature of the crimes they had committed. Mary's defense team argued that she had been a victim of extreme neglect and abuse, and that her actions were the result of a disturbed upbringing. Some experts believed that Mary had been psychologically damaged by the trauma she had endured at the hands of her mother, and that this had contributed to her violent tendencies. Despite the defense's arguments, Mary was found guilty of the manslaughter of both children on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Her case was highly controversial, with some people arguing that she should have been treated as an adult due to the severity of her actions, while others believe that she should have been given the chance for rehabilitation due to her young age. Mary Bell was sentenced to life imprisonment, though her sentence would later be reduced to a minimum of 12 years. She was released from prison in 1980, at the age of 23, and was given a new identity to protect her from public attention. Mary Bell's release sparked a heated debate about the justice system's treatment of young offenders, especially those who commit heinous acts at a very early age. While some argued that she had been rehabilitated and deserved a second chance, others felt that she had not been sufficiently punished for her crimes. Mary's story did not end with her release. Over the years, she maintained a low profile, and her identity was kept secret in an effort to protect her from the media and public scrutiny. She went on to live a relatively quiet life, even becoming a mother herself. However, her past would continue to haunt her, as she would occasionally be thrust back into the public eye whenever her story resurfaced in the media. Psychologists who studied Mary Bell after her conviction found that her case presented a complex picture. While some believed that she exhibited signs of psychopathy, others suggested that her violent actions were a result of the severe neglect and abuse she experienced in her early childhood. Mary's case has been studied extensively in the fields of criminology and psychology. Some experts believe that her violent behavior was an extreme reaction to the trauma she endured, while others argue that her actions may have been influenced by a deeply ingrained psychological condition. What is clear is that Mary Bell's story is one that raises important questions about the nature of evil, the capacity for rehabilitation, and the impact of childhood trauma on future behavior. It is a case that continues to provoke debate and reflection to this day. The case of Mary Bell remains one of the most disturbing and perplexing stories in the history of juvenile crime. It is a case that challenges our understanding of childhood development, the effects of trauma, and the possibility of rehabilitation for young offenders. The story of Mary Bell is not just about the shocking nature of her crimes, it is about the deep, underlying issues that contributed to her actions and the lessons we can learn from her case. While Mary Bell's story may be one of darkness, it also serves as a reminder of the importance of early intervention, the need for mental health support, and the potential for change, even for those who have committed the most heinous acts. Whether or not Mary Bell's rehabilitation was truly complete, her story remains a cautionary tale about the fragility of childhood innocence and the complexities of human behavior.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.